Awesome. Hello, everyone. We got people logging in. Great. Thanks for joining, everyone. We'll give people a few moments to log in. We're going to have a good crowd today. Awesome. Love to see it. Happy Thursday, everyone. Week's almost done. I hope everyone is warm and safe. All this interesting weather we've got going on, especially us here in the South. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining second office hours of 2021. We have a really awesome guest with us today. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Welcome to Office Hours. Just as a reminder, Ambition Office Hours is here to share best practices, industry trends, and insights, and answer any of your questions. So if you have questions for myself or for our guests today, drop them in the chat, drop them in the Q&A. Anything's fair game. Office Hours is open to anyone who's interested in learning more about gamification, coaching, ambition in general. So if you guys enjoy today's session, if you have coworkers, peers, or even reps that you manage that you think would benefit from a session like this, send them our way. We'll be sure in the recap email that you have the link to register for future sessions. And then join us on the third Thursday of each month for Office Hours. We've got a great lineup this year. We already have all of the topics and special guests already reserved for the entire year. So you can check out our lineup and select some topics that are really interesting to you and you think will be helpful and register for them now. Awesome. Today's experts. I'm Emma Hamilton. I'm a customer success manager here at Ambition, and I'm joined today by Ward Kennedy. So Ward, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit, what you do here at Ambition.
Yeah. Hey guys. I'm seeing some familiar names in here. So good to see you guys again. Ward Kennedy. I'm the senior solutions architect at Ambition, and also head up the implementation team. So we kind of do everything from talk to you before you buy Ambition, all the way through to getting ready to launch Ambition. So as you can imagine, that involves a lot of integration talk and a lot of scoping talk. So whenever we get started, we're going to talk mostly about data and how to gamify your data before we open it up for the Q&A.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of you on this call have met Ward before. He is such an important part of our team, works super closely with our customers. And he's so smart. So drop your questions for him. I always say that. Anytime I work with Ward, I'm like, oh, you're so smart. Make me feel better about my job, what we do here. Cool. So I'll let Ward take it and kind of review what today's agenda is, what we're going to talk about, and then he's going to be sharing some awesome information with us.
Cool. So I know some of these questions can come across as, well, that's why I have Ambition, or that's why I'm looking at Ambition. But what I want to call attention to is that all of this stuff is, from my perspective, about data. So, and I don't want data to sound scary or boring, however you decide to look at it. But essentially, what I believe is that a lot of data sources can be gamified, and through that gamification or learning about how you can gamify that data, you can do a lot of really cool things with it. So it's not just about competitions and scorecards and all of that kind of stuff, but what it is a different way of looking at your data and deciding what's happening as a result of that gamification. So what I'd like to talk about is really briefly, we're just going to say, what am I even talking about? Why should you do it? How do you do it? I'll give you some pro tips, and then we'll go into the Q&A. So my presentation section isn't going to take very long, but definitely hoping to stimulate some questions through that. So first, gamification of data. What? So essentially think of your data as, for what it is. It's a bunch of records where every record means something. So it means, it's an event or it's an action that some person took, or it represents an opportunity that is going through various stages or is about to close, whatever that may be. And what we're trying to do through gamifying data is turning that into some sort of scorable KPI. So the uh, the main thing that you need to know about gamification is that it's got to be scorable. Think about when you're playing a game of some sort, and someone's going to win and someone's going to lose, and there's a lot of things that happen in between there. Well, some would argue that you're either first or you're last, but in truth, there's a lot of things that happen between first and last. And how do you rank that? Um, thinking about it logically, if you're going to take a bunch of records or a bunch of data or a report or something like that, there are a few things that have to happen in order to have that ranking system. So you have to think about, how does your data actually represent the KPIs that you want to gamify. So whenever I work with most customers that Ambition has. And as our team grows, that quickly changes. So don't think that I'm talking about you if I say something uh, that represents this struggle. But essentially, we get asked a lot, "Hey, I want Ambition to do X, Y, Z." And one of the first questions that we ask back is, "Are you tracking that?" That's an important question. It's not because we just want to turn the question around on you, and it's not because we don't want to help. What the reason is because if you don't have data that represents the KPIs you're talking about, then it's going to be really hard to gamify because, like I said, that ranking system is really important. So, also, the last thing is, can you drive that employee behavior? If I'm playing a game of basketball and I want my team to win, what kind of behavior can I drive in order to make my team win? So I can shoot baskets more often. I can run faster. There are a lot of behaviors that I can drive in my game in order for my team to win. So, right. So, but why though? So have you ever been in a fitness class? So like Orange Theory, CrossFit, Peloton, things like that. It's a really simple question. What was the result of gamifying your workout? There are going to be those people, and you may be one of them, who say, you know what, not for me. But most people, in gamifying your workout, you end up performing better. It's just human nature. You see a number, you want to increase it, and you want to perform better than the person next to you or better than you did the previous day. Um, so essentially, that's why. That's why you would want to gamify your data, and that's why you would want to make it visible. Is, you know what? People are going to perform better whenever they're having fun, whenever that's turned into a game. Um, and holds you accountable. That's right. So one question you have to ask yourself though is, how do you make it consistent? I'm sure everybody in here has burned out on maybe one of the three fitness classes listed there. It's easy to get burned out whenever you push too hard. So you do have to make it consistent, and Ambition has a lot of tools to help you do that, which is a really good thing. All right. So I'm bought in. How do I prep my data for gamification? So, like I said earlier, think in terms of scoring. Scoring is really important, not because the purpose is to name and shame people or anything like that, but scoring is what's going to allow you to take that data and decide what to do with it. So, first question you need to ask is, who gets a point? So you've got some data. So you've got a call log. You have to know who gets credit for making the phone call. say you want everybody to have more talk time. Who gets credit for that talk time? And whenever I say that, a lot of people are like, well, I want the agent to get credit. But when you look at a record or a report, um, sometimes there are multiple options for someone to get credit for something. So in the case of like an opportunity, is it the person who created the opportunity? Is it the person who now owns the opportunity? You have a lot of questions that you have to ask yourself for this particular set of circumstances. Who gets credit? The next thing is when do they get it? When do they get the credit? This one's really important because you want to decide what day a user gets credit. So in the case of an opportunity, let's say there's someone who created an opportunity or the pipeline. Now let's say that there's an owner who's different from the creator, who is going to close that deal. So you don't want to give, and this sounds very straightforward, but it's a really important distinction to make is, you don't want to give credit to the owner on the created date. That just doesn't make sense, right? For closing an opportunity, you want to give it to them on the close date. That starts to get really complicated. I see some names in here who I've worked with, and I know that some of you guys have very complicated data sets. So this is really important to understand. There always needs to be a date for that user to get credit. And then what are the scoring criteria? And I don't mean in a competition or on a scorecard or anything like that. What I mean is, per record, how do we determine whether that is part of that user's score or not? So essentially, if you're familiar with Salesforce, you've got filters on your report. And that's basically what we're talking about. Hey, I only want to give this user credit on this date when the talk time is greater than 30 seconds. Maybe that's some sort of metric that you guys have, or only on deals that are greater than X amount of dollars. So what that allows you to do is customize those scoring criterias and help you drill down into what behavior you're really trying to drive, which is the most important piece here. Once you've done that, you may find that there are some things that don't cleanly answer these questions. And that's where you have to do some work. So that's where you call your IT guy and you say, hey, I need some help. So whenever you're scoring anything and users are part of some sort of competition, if someone is losing by 1 point and they feel that their quote data is wrong, well, there's a problem, right? And you might say, well, hey, it's mostly right. It's very close. That user probably doesn't agree. So it's really important that you can represent all of the KPIs that you want to track through these fields. So you need to be able to set the scoring criteria by having fields in your data that answer those questions. So, and then the last thing is, I always recommend that you try to gamify through individual records rather than pre-aggregated reports. You can do both, but if you want to get super granular and say reward somebody for having a deal over X amount or having a call over X amount of time or whatever the case may be, then you're going to need individual records. So for that, you need to either make sure you have a record ID per record or create them. And there are a lot of different ways that you can do that I'd be happy to talk to you guys in the Q&A session if we need to. Okay, so I think I need some pro tips. All right. So this is one of the things that this is my main job at Ambition is to, whenever there are some difficulties with creating gamifiable data so that you can actually use Ambition, and this applies to any gamification tool really. helping come up with ways to make that easier. So one of the things is dates. Dates are really hard, and I already said that once. So I'm saying it again to reemphasize it. Dates are hard. Um, I like to use dates as tags for stage changes. So imagine you've got an opportunity, uh, and you've got a created date and you've got a closed date. Um, Whenever that opportunity is in stage one, say you've got stage one, two, and three. Stage one's when it's created. Stage three is when it's closed. Stage two is kind of in this no man's land where you've got no date to give credit to that user. So if someone creates an opportunity, you can give them credit on the created date. If they close it, you can give them credit on the closed date. But what happens when you want to reward people for or drive the behavior of getting an opportunity to stage two? Uh, when do you give them credit? So I like to use dates as those tags for stage changes. There are a lot of sneaky ways that we can make it happen if you don't have those dates. So don't worry about it if you don't. But it always makes it easier. And one of my favorite situations is whenever a customer is launching Salesforce alongside of Ambition, and they ask us what they need. That gives us the opportunity to say, hey, in your Salesforce instance, if you can have a date field for every stage change, that's going to make it way easier to gamify. It'll also help you outside of Ambition on your reporting. You'll know exactly, you can create formulas for how long it takes to get from here to there and so on, which is very powerful. So always know who, when, and why. For every single KPI you want to create, ask yourself who gets credit, ask yourself when do they get credit, and ask yourself why they get credit. If you can't answer those three questions, you're going to have a hard time gamifying your data. So it's really important that you know who, as in the user field, when, as in the date field, and why, as in how are you going to filter to make sure that only certain records account or get counted for that credit. Here's a big one. Records can change. So you've got an opportunity, you close it for $1,000. Turns out a week later that was a mistake. It should have been $1,200. All right. Well, how do you let Ambition know that that record has changed? So in your integration process, it's really important that you account for new records, which is the obvious one, but also changed records. So in Salesforce, our managed package does this automatically because we look for changes on the records. And that change timestamp is what we use to determine whether it needs to be sent to Ambition or not. Whenever you're integrating some other system, some custom system, your process needs to account for that. So once you're doing that, it makes it a lot easier for Ambition to always reflect exactly what you're trying to show. Integration types are important. So daily totals versus records. Daily totals is like a report where we've got Ward with 3 calls and 2 connects and 10 minutes of talk time, and then the next row is Emma with 5 calls and 3 connects and 15 minutes of talk time. She always does better than me. So that's going to be your summarized report, which is like a daily totals report. You can update that throughout the day. Records is different. This is truly my 3 calls. Each one will have its own line. So Ward has a call, Ward had a call, Ward had a call. And each one of those lines has some information about that call. And then Emma, for her 5 calls, she's going to have 5 calls where, the ones that connected are going to have a field, result or something like that, where it says whether it connected or not. This is a really important distinction. Daily totals is completely fine. We integrate with daily totals integration types all day long, but one limitation that you have is that you can't reward users for record level activity. So a long call, a big opportunity, things like that. Cadence is important. So The rate at which you upload data is extremely important. You could upload once a day, you could upload every 30 seconds. And the rate that you upload is going to affect the features that you're using in Ambition. So something like a scorecard. Imagine if you upload every day and you go back and you users log into Ambition the next day. It's their scorecard's going to be empty. They're going to have to flip back to yesterday to see what their end result was. Whereas if you are able to upload even every hour, well, now a user can check on Ambition every single hour. They can log in and they'll see an update. And they'll be able to make micro adjustments throughout the day on their behavior. Like, hey, Bob is outperforming me. I need to step it up because Bob's like, you know, he's nothing like me. So that's what's going to happen whenever you think about cadence. So cadence is one of those things that we talk about in whenever we're talking integrations with new customers. We always want it to be fast enough to give users a great experience, but not so fast that the IT teams are going to have trouble actually integrating with Ambition. And then finally, what is your ETL method? So ETL meaning extract, transform, and load. So whenever you're integrating with Ambition, data has to be extracted from that system. It usually has to be transformed in some way. Maybe that's adding a record ID. Maybe that's adjusting some fields that you might need. Maybe that is flattening the file so that it's a flat CSV or JSON. And then it needs to be loaded into Ambition so that we can use it. So really thinking about that process literally affects whether you can integrate with Ambition or not with any system. So how are you going to extract it? How are you going to transform it? And then how are you going to load it? Oh,
Sorry, I think maybe I kicked everything off.
it was just a split second for us. So
I'm still here. Cool. Okay,
yeah.
let me reshare.
And actually, that was the end. So now we're on our Q&A session.
Perfect. Q&A time. Guys, Ward is our senior solutions architect, so throw your most challenging questions his way.
Give me softballs.
Q&A. We do have a couple questions that were sent in when people registered, so we can kick off with those. Maybe that can get your brain thinking of some questions you want to ask him. I'll stop sharing. Oh, Taylor has a question. Let's see if I can figure out how to do this. Hey, Taylor, I just gave you permission to talk. Do you have a question?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, so we're actually using Ambition here. I can actually hear myself, which is very messing with me. Hold up. Sorry, it's an echo. Let me turn this down. We're using Ambition to track daily check-ins of customers. So as it stands right now, that's a record base for us. And in the raw data, we actually can see the name of the customer that's being checked in with. Is there any way for us to leverage that? Like what I would like to see is that in Ambition, if a customer goes so long without being reached out to, I'd like that to trigger a notification or a report to myself, to say, hey, listen, this specific customer that you say needs to be reached out to on a weekly basis, according to the data that's being delivered to us, has not been reached out to in a month. Is that something that I don't know how that would work? Is there a solution for something like that?
Right now, it's not. But I should ask, how many is this customer list? Is it finite and small? Probably not. But
no, it's not.
Okay. So in the case where you've got customers or products or something like that there's a specific list and it's small enough, you could create metrics that are looking for that field and only give credit when that field equals some customer name.
Sure.
But when that list could be anything, thousands or more, hundreds, thousands, whatever the case may be. Right now, we don't have a good way to do that, but
Okay.
it is something that that I've spoken to our product team about, where it would be great to be able to look at a record, some field on a record, and determine whether or display whether that record has some certain value or not. But
Okay.
right now, in terms of how we create those metrics, we're really looking for rep level gamified data.
Okay. Cool.
Yep,
All right.
that was a good
Appreciate
question. Really good question.
Thanks, Taylor.
Not a softball, Taylor.
Yeah, sorry.
That's a good one. All right. Cool. Who else has got questions for us? If not, I've got a couple ones that, like I said, were sent in. So question, what tools can Ambition integrate with?
Good question. And you know what? We get this one internally all day long. Hey, does Ambition integrate with X? Hey, does Ambition integrate with Y? And my answer is the exact same every single time. And so this is a really good question to understand the answer to. So Ambition can integrate with anything if you can push that data to Ambition. So I talked about our ETL practice earlier. If you can extract the data from system X, and then you can make sure that it has the components that we need. So a user and a date, maybe a record ID if you're doing a records integration. If it has those gamifiable components, all you have to be able to do is push that to Ambition. So we have an API endpoint that we can set up for your Ambition instance, and we have an FTP server that we do the same. So as long as you can push that data to Ambition, we can usually integrate with it. It really just comes down to, what does the data look like, which is really the point of the beginning of this presentation, is how do I gamify my data, and what do I need to make sure that it's gamifiable? So the answer is, honestly, if you can send us the data, we can integrate with it. And then at that point, it's probably just working with me or the rest of the Ambition team on making sure that your data can actually be gamified.
Awesome. Let's see, got another one. How much time does it take to set up a new integration?
So this one's a fun one that we also get a lot. This depends on your IT team's technical competence, I'll say, but also on their schedules. So in a world where they've got free time set aside, this typically does not take too long. And it does depend on how complex your data systems are. So in the case of Salesforce, we're talking about a Salesforce administrator logging into Ambition, clicking a few buttons, and we're integrated. So Ambition has the ability to get those records that you specify. For some other system, it really just depends. There are a few types of systems that are easier to integrate with Ambition. So like a call detail records are usually pretty close to what we need to make work. However, not every phone provider has an API available or has some sort of automated way to extract data. There are a lot of reasons that it could take a little bit longer, but not to give a non-answer, but it really just depends on your teams. And we do work with your teams on making sure that they can get us the data properly.
Awesome. Yeah, if you guys are looking into adding new tools to your tech stack, I would just recommend letting your CSM know, and we can kind of begin the process of helping support you guys to figure out what the best route would be to get that data into Ambition. And whether it's through like through Salesforce, because if you are already a Salesforce customer and that integration is already live, sometimes it's easy to push whatever new tool you're standing up, push that data to Salesforce, and then that integration is already live in Ambition. So we can just push the Salesforce data into Ambition. But yeah, always feel free to loop in your CSM and let us know when you guys are adding or changing to your tech stack, and we can help you kind of come up with the best plan forward.
And I want to add really quick to that too. We do have something like Ring Central. We have a partner that we can work with who knows exactly what Ambition needs for an integration. So that one is typically faster if you're willing to rely on a third party. Something like McLeod, we have the same thing. So we have a partner who has done multiple McLeod integrations with Ambition. So there are definitely some options, and that's why exactly you should bring it up to your CSM so that we can start having that conversation.
Awesome. And then the last one that we have from the send-in question, so if you guys have anything, go ahead and drop it in the chat or the Q&A, is how long does data take to process in Ambition?
So data processing in Ambition is really fast. If you are sending an enormous file, obviously Ambition has to take time to sift through that and make sure that everything gets processed. But I always like to point back to our Salesforce integration as an example here. Salesforce is going to send those, like I said, new and changed records every minute. So say in an instance where you've got 20 metrics, Salesforce, our data pusher in Salesforce is going to wake up every minute, look for new records or changed records, send them to Ambition. Ambition is going to process those records through the metric and then display them. And typically, Ambition dashboards are updated with new data roughly every 37, 40 seconds. So that is not from the time that data is processed. That is every 37, 40 seconds. That's not from the time that the data is sent to Ambition, but that's literally every 37, 40 seconds. Because Ambition is processing those records very quickly. And one of the reasons we can do that is because we're not processing an entire record. We are only processing the fields that you are sending us relevant to that metric. So we're going to give credit to the user on the date when some filter is true or false or whatever the case may be. And we're going to run through those records really quickly and then display them.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to your CSM or to gethelp@ambition.com. I know that data integrity is like the backbone of Ambition. If you don't have it, it's going to be really hard to use the tool. So this is really important stuff, and we're here to help along the way. Everyone's going to get a recap of this session along with registration for future sessions. Our next one is going to be super cool. We're going to have our brand new VP of Product, Butler Rains, here to talk about the new Ambition product roadmap. So definitely don't want to miss that one. But everyone have a great rest of your week, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, guys.